we can very well describe the practice of Buddhism as the practice of a kind of art, the art of being peace, the art of promoting peace in society, in the world. And as Buddhists, as the continuation of Lord Buddha, all of us should learn that art, how to be peace and how to promote peace in our family, in our community, in our society. If we look deeply into ourselves, we can realize that there are elements of war that are already in us. Our tension, the tension in our body, our emotions like fear, anger, violence, hate, despair, our wrong thinking, our wrong perceptions are there in us, and they can be described as elements of war. Practicing Buddhism is first of all to recognize these negative elements within us in order to take care of them, in order to transform them. When we go back to our breathing and become aware of our body, we may recognize the fact that there is a lot of tension, of stress within our body. And because of that awareness, we may like to do something in order to release the tension in our body. And in the sutra on mindful breathing, Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha provides us with the practice in order to release the tension in our body. The third exercise of mindful breathing and the fourth exercise of mindful breathing are for that. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body with all the tension in it. And breathing out, I release the tension within my body. With a few minutes of mindful breathing, we can release all the tensions in our body. We know that the tension in our body, if continued to be accumulated, will bring about a lot of problems. And many kinds of sickness are the result of the tension in our body. And scientists of our time have realized that if we are able to release the tension in our body, and then our body will have the capacity of healing itself. We don't need a lot of medicine. We need to release the tension in our body, and suddenly our body will have the capacity of healing the sickness in it. When we are able to make peace with our body, we can begin to make peace with our feelings and emotions. We have painful feelings, we have strong emotions. We don't know how to handle them. And the Buddha in the Sutra of Mindful Breathing help us, show us the way to recognize the painful feeling, the painful emotions in us in order to embrace them and bring a relief and finally transform them. The seventh exercise of mindful breathing is for that. Breathing in, I recognize the painful feeling, the painful emotion within me. And the eighth exercise, breathing out, I release the tension in my feelings, in my emotions. Learning to recognize, embrace, and transform our emotions like fear, anger, hate, jealousy, despair is very important. And that is the art of making peace with ourselves, taking care of our body, and taking care of our feelings and emotions. And then the Buddha proceeds to help us to recognize our mental formations, and among them our thinking. We know that we still have a lot of wrong thinking in us. And the wrong thinking will bring about wrong speech and wrong action that will cause war between us and the other person, between our group and the other group, between our nation and the other nation. And that is why the Buddhist practice begins with going home to oneself, recognize the elements of tension, of pain, of conflict within, in order to restore peace in our body, in our feelings, and also in our mental formations, our mind. If parents know the practice, they will make their children happy, they will make the family life happy. And the children who grow from such a family would learn how to recognize the difficulties, the stress in their body, recognize their feelings, their emotions, and learn how to deal with them. And parents, when they practice, they can teach children to practice also the practice of being peace. When the children go to school, and then the teachers, the school teachers should be able to help them also, because there are children who have not had a chance in their family. They have not had a chance to learn how to love, to forgive, to make the happiness of other people in the family. And then school teachers, if they know the practice, and then they can help their children, and they can give their students a second chance. So school can become a second kind of family, and school teachers can become kind of parents in order to help their students. Now we have a lot of problems in the family and in school. There's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of anger, a lot of violence, both in the family and the school. And that is why if parents and school teachers learn the practice of being peace, they will help their children and their students to learn that art of being peace also. And we hope that if you are in the realm of education, please reflect on it and try to bring this kind of learning, this kind of practice originated from Buddhism into family life and into school life. In the 30 years of teaching in the West, we have offered this kind of practice of being peace to friends in many countries. And countless people have profited from the practice and have reconciled with their father, with their mother, with their son, their daughter, their partner, and bring back happiness. We also share the teaching of the practice of listening with compassion and using loving speech in order to restore communication. Nowadays we have a lot of sophisticated means of communication, but communication between husband and wife, father and son, mother and daughter has become much more difficult. And we witness to the fact that many fathers cannot speak to their son, many sons and daughters cannot listen to their father. And if there is no communication, how could we hope to help each other remove our wrong perceptions in order to make peace with each other? In Plum Village, France, during many years we have invited groups of Palestinians and Israelis to come and practice with us. And we have learned a lot from them. These groups, upon arrival, they could not look at each other because there's a lot of suffering, of fear, of anger, of suspicion in every group. And the Sangha in Plum Village helped them to practice, first of all, to release the tension in their body, to practice breathing, to practice mindful walking, to practice mindful sitting, in order to recognize the pain, the sorrow, the fear, the emotion within them, in order to get a relief. The practice of deep relaxation proposed by Lord Buddha, the practice of recognizing emotions proposed by Lord Buddha have helped tremendously these two groups of people to practice. After the first week of releasing the tension, recognizing painful emotions, they are initiated to practice deep listening to each other and using the language of loving kindness. When you suffer, you would like to make your suffering known to the other person. And if you know how to use a kind of speech that is not blaming, condemnation, accusation, the kind of speech that is called in Buddhism loving speech, and then you can tell the other person about your suffering, your difficulties, and your deep aspiration. And if you are the listener, and then you practice breathing in and out to calm yourself, to remember that to listen to the other person is a practice of compassion. Because if you know how to listen deeply with compassion, in 1 hour you can help relieve a lot of suffering in the other person. In Mahayana Buddhism, we have the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, who is very skillful in the practice of compassionate listening. And if we learn that art of compassionate listening for a few days, and then we'll be able to listen with compassion to the other person or to the other group of people. And we know that listening like that for 1 hour or 2 can already bring a lot of relief to the person. That person might have not had any chance. Nobody has been able to listen to them. But now you are practicing like a bodhisattva of compassion. You are listening to him, you are listening to her with compassion, and that is tremendously helpful. The other side, the other group may tell you everything, every kind of suffering and difficulties they have endured, like the Palestinians. And the Israelis would sit very still in order to listen, and the Plum Village Sangha sit with them in order to support them in the practice of deep listening. And after having listened for 1 hour, the situation has already changed. You realize that on the other side, people have suffered exactly like on your side. Adult children, they have suffered very much the same kind of suffering that on your side you have suffered. And because of that, for the first time, you can look at them with the eyes of compassion. You recognize them as living beings, human beings like you. Before that, you think that only your side suffers. The other side never suffers. The other side only wants you to suffer. But now, after a few sessions of deep listening and compassionate listening, you recognize that they have suffered tremendously like your side. And listening like that help them to suffer less and help you to suffer less at the same time. Finally, after 10 days of practice, people could hold hands, the two groups can hold hands together and practice walking meditation and or sit down and share a meal in brotherhood and sisterhood. The practice taken up by groups of Israelis and Palestinians in Plum Village is always successful. And at the end of the period of practice, the two groups always come together and report to the Mahasangha about the fruit of their practice. They always promise that upon going home, they will create a Sangha, a practice center, so that other people, Israelis and Palestinians, could come and practice in order to suffer less. We know that in order to have right action and right speech, we should have right view. Right view is the view of dependent co-arising. Right view is the view of no self, of interbeing. And practitioners should always remember to maintain that kind of right view alive in their daily life. Looking, listening, we always have to touch the insight of dependent co-arising, interbeing, and no self. Suppose we speak about a father and his son. Looking deeply with meditation, we can see very clearly that the son is the continuation of the father. And if the son practices mindful breathing and look deeply into his body, he will see that his father is fully present in every cell of his body. His father is not only outside of him, his father is inside of him. His mother also is inside of him. And the father, when he looks deeply into his son, he can also see the same thing. He can see himself in the son. And if the son suffers, the father will suffer at the same time. It is impossible for a son to be truly happy if his father still suffers deeply. It is impossible for a father to be truly happy if the son still suffers deeply. And that is why The suffering is not individual. Suffering is not an individual matter. If you suffer, your son also suffer. Your father also suffer. And if your son is happy, that is also your happiness. So in the light of no self, of interdependence, suffering is not an individual matter. Suffering is both for the son and the father, and that is the insight of no self. That is the insight of interbeing. We know that everything is linked to everything else. And the well-being of animals is very crucial for the well-being of human beings. The well-being of plants and minerals are also crucial for the well-being of human beings. And that is why protecting the environment, protecting other species on Earth, is to protect mankind. And that is the insight of interbeing. And not only the Buddhists have access to that kind of insight, but non-Buddhists also have access to that kind of insight. And sometimes the Buddhists have access, but they don't make use of that insight. As a monk, as a monastic, we might forget that we are a monastic, and we continue with our struggle for power. We want to build a prestige. We want to build only a big temple. And we do not have the capacity of being peace and making peace, promoting peace in our own Sangha, in our own monastic community. We are not in peace with ourselves. We are not in peace with our brothers and sisters in the monastic community. We are not truly practicing as a monk. As a lay person also, we have received 5 mindfulness trainings, 5 precepts, but we are so busy, we don't know how to apply the teaching of the 5 precepts into our daily life.